3 years ago, my friend Ash approached me for help with an important task. There was a wheelchair-bound man named Gary who had a strong desire to go swimming, but none of his care staff were willing to assist him, except for Ash. Due to my previous experience working in various care positions, I readily agreed to lend a hand to Gary. Initially, my involvement was meant to be temporary, just assisting Gary occasionally. However, after about a month, the care facility asked if I would be interested in taking on regular shifts. Intrigued by the opportunity, I agreed and began working part-time. The shifts I was assigned consisted of a waking night sleep shift from 23 until 12 the next day, as well as a 4-hour shift between 15 and 19. Additionally, I was given a few day shifts and was often asked to cover for other staff members during their holidays or in case of illness. At the care facility, there were 4 other staff members: Ash, Jake, Craig, and Lisa. Ash and I were dedicated to our roles and genuinely committed to assisting Gary. However, the same could not be said for everyone else. Lisa, who occasionally worked a sleep shift and a couple of day shifts, had a severe issue with alcoholism. She frequently prioritized her desire to go drinking over her work responsibilities. Surprisingly, Gary seemed to have developed feelings for Lisa, perhaps due to her kind treatment towards him. However, I suspected that Lisa's motives were more manipulative, taking advantage of Gary's loneliness. Jake, on the other hand, had specific conditions for his work schedule. He refused to work on weekends and only agreed to 2 sleep shifts. Furthermore, Jake disliked any tasks related to housework or personal care, finding them repulsive. Then there was Craig, who had been working in this position for a decade. Craig had a rather unique approach to his job. He insisted on working only 3 sleep shifts and refused to take on any day shifts. Additionally, he adamantly believed that he shouldn't be responsible for any housework whatsoever. Simple tasks like making beds or even changing sheets were beneath him. To accommodate Craig's preferences, adjustments were made in the facility. For instance, vacuum cleaners had to be emptied and cleaned after each use, and the carer's bed had no spare sheets available, as Craig refused to change them. The responsibility of putting Gary in his pajamas was passed on to the day staff, as Craig didn't want to handle that task either. As I reflected on the situation, it became evident why no one was willing to take Gary swimming. The underlying issue was that 2 staff members were allocated a significant portion of the work hours, yet refused to participate in any housework or personal care. Craig, in particular, had been effortlessly earning a steady income of at least £1,800 per month for a decade, all while avoiding any actual work. For half of the week, he had entire days of leisure. It was a clear case of easy money without accountability or effort. These 3 staff members seemed to have an uncanny ability to escape consequences for their actions. Despite Lisa's repeated suspensions during my time there due to her drunken and abusive behavior on duty, she managed to return to work after each incident. At one point, she was suspended for a staggering 10 weeks, only for everything to be brushed under the rug once the suspension ended. My primary reason for joining the care facility was to compensate for Gary's mother, who was unable to work due to knee surgery. However, after about a year, I discovered something unsettling. Gary's mother was receiving her full wage every month, yet there was no indication of statutory sick pay on her payslip. Immediately, I sensed foul play. It became clear to me that Gary's mother had control over his account, which the local authority used to deposit funds for his care. Shockingly, I also learned that Gary was utilizing this account to finance his own lifestyle, which included expenses for adult chatrooms, clothing, and gifts for the staff. He showed no shame in his actions and even laughed about it openly. This revelation deeply bothered me because, like every family in the UK, I diligently pay taxes to my local authority, which are meant to cover essential services such as social care. Motivated by a sense of injustice, I reported this matter to the local authority, hoping for some action to be taken. Unfortunately, my efforts were met with disappointment as I received no meaningful response. Despite this setback, I decided to continue working at the facility while diligently collecting evidence for the future. I also encouraged Gary to maintain a handover book for the staff where they could record their activities for the day, allowing others to track the actions or inactions of the staff. Until just last week, I had been working approximately 30 hours a week, shouldering many of the day-to-day responsibilities. However, I received a text from Gary's mother informing me that she would be returning to work the following week, resulting in a reduction of my hours to a single 4-hour shift every other week. I politely declined the offer, expressing my gratitude but declining to continue in such a limited capacity. I worked until I received my final paycheck and then made the decision to quit. In a last-ditch effort to have someone listen and take action, I composed a comprehensive email detailing every aspect of Gary's situation and sent it to the emergency care team at the adult care service. To my relief, my email caught their attention, and today a representative came out to interview me. They displayed a keen interest in what I had to say and confirmed the validity of my initial email. They assured me that they had been building a case against this situation for quite some time, and it extended back over the entire 20-year period during which Gary had been funding his own care. An investigation was now officially underway, finally shedding light on the troubling circumstances that had persisted for far too long. I had meticulously documented evidence that Gary's mother had been paying herself for working 9 hours every Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday throughout the duration of my employment. She had personally submitted these timesheets to the local authority and the council. However, the truth was that she arranged for other staff members, including myself and 2 others, to cover those shifts. I possessed messages from her explicitly instructing me to take over her shifts. The handover book clearly showed her lack of involvement, as she never wrote anything in it. Moreover, the medication charts at the facility had no record of her administering any medication, as she never signed them. Yesterday morning, both Gary and his mother were summoned by the council to provide an explanation as to why his entire contingency fund, intended for sick pay, maternity pay, and unforeseen expenses, had been depleted. There was not a penny left. Gary, feeling a degree of guilt, promptly issued a check for £5,000. A sum he had recently inherited following his grandfather's passing. This was a substantial admission of guilt on his part. Subsequently, when the social worker met with Gary at his residence and conducted further questioning, he openly admitted his awareness of the conspiracy between him and his mother. He acknowledged that he had been paying her a full wage every month, fully aware that she wasn't working at all. This confession was a major breakthrough for the social worker, further cementing the case against them. The social worker had intended to interview Gary's mother, but by that point she understood the gravity of their actions and the fact that they had engaged in a criminal conspiracy to defraud the council. The potential amount defrauded over the course of 20 years was estimated to be at least £250,000. Recognizing the severity of the situation, the social worker promptly contacted the police, who would handle the arrest and subsequent interview. I was informed that I, along with the other staff members, would be contacted by the police for interviews in due course. Additionally, I learned that Gary would no longer have control over his staffing, and the care organization brought in to oversee his care would not retain any of the current staff members except for my reliable friend Ash, who had an impeccable record. For now, I find myself without a job, but I'm planning to take a foreign holiday next week. Upon my return, I will diligently search for a new employment opportunity. It is worth emphasizing that the seemingly untouchable staff members were protected due to their awareness of the deception. Dismissing them would have been unwise, as the mother rightly anticipated. However, I swiftly dismantled their scheme, ultimately leading to their downfall. A few years ago, during our high school years, there was this guy who made my life miserable. He was a total jerk, and his actions had a negative impact on my entire 4 years of school. At the end of it all, he was 2 years behind us, and once we graduated, he left school entirely. It was frustrating to see such a foolish outcome. Now, let's fast forward to a couple of months ago. I've become an agrarian technician, complete with an office and all the perks that come with it. I even have a potted ficus plant adorning my workspace. Enter a guy named Don. He approaches me seeking advice for his farm and requesting that I order various phyto products, such as plant treatments and nutrients. Initially, I agreed to assist, but I request to visit his farm first. However, Don adamantly refuses, insisting that I simply place the order without seeing the place. I stand my ground and decline his demand. In response, he becomes infuriated, launching into a tirade of profanities before storming off. To make matters worse, he even scratches my car in a fit of rage. What an idiot! In that moment, I decide to take action. I make a call to my friend and mentor, the only other agrarian technician in the area, explaining the entire situation to him. Fortunately, he agrees to send Don back to me. Don eventually agrees to let me see his farm, and to my surprise, I discover that he has an entirely illegal structure on the property, a half-finished house that is cleverly categorized as a machinery deposit, allowing him to evade taxes. Upon closer inspection, I notice that his trees are infested with various pests, and his crops are on the verge of dying. And then I spot him, Mr. Jerk, Don's father. He's there, berating an unfortunate individual for reasons unknown. Determined to focus on the task at hand, I decide to ignore him and proceed with my job. I order 20 tons of manure for the crops, along with fertilizer and several types of pesticides. I inform Don that he needs to hire someone with the appropriate license to handle these substances. In a sly manner, Don smirks and reveals his true intentions. He states that he will only sign the contract when the products are delivered, and he demands that I include a statement claiming I have never been to his farm. But I am not one to be easily fooled or taken advantage of. I place the order differently than my usual method. Instead of paying for everything up front and collecting the money from the client later, I opt for the alternative approach. The order will arrive, the client will pay me, the deliverer and the seller simultaneously. Now, on to the day of delivery. Don and his father are nowhere to be found, and it becomes clear that their plan is to make me foot the bill without any intention of reimbursing me. But not on my watch. I instruct the truck driver to dump everything right in front of what appears to be a machinery deposit. So there it is, 20 tons of manure sitting just 2 meters away from their doorstep. Then the other products follow suit, and we wait. After a couple of hours, they finally return home, assuming we had already left. To their astonishment, they are greeted by a towering mound of manure. Don loses his temper and begins yelling at me, while his father, being the jerk he is, punctures one of the truck's tires with a knife. In an unexpected turn of events, the truck driver retaliates and physically strikes Don's father. Sensing the escalating situation, Don and his father threaten to call the police, but to their surprise, the driver beats them to it and contacts law enforcement himself. Upon arrival, the police quickly discover several alarming factors. Firstly, they find ammonium nitrate, the fertilizer, improperly stored near the tractor's fuel supply. Secondly, a television antenna emerges from the pile of manure, revealing the previously invisible house behind it. As a result, Don's father is promptly arrested, charged, and ultimately sentenced for the illegal use of hazardous substances. Additionally, due to the discovery of unregistered firearms on the property, they face further legal consequences. They lose both the illegal house, which is subsequently destroyed, and their farm, including all the ruined crops and trees. Meanwhile, the truck driver receives his rightful payment and a new tire. Other individuals involved in the situation also recover their owed money. As for me, I successfully receive payment for my work, 2,000 units, for the damages to my car, 400 units, and an additional 1,000 units for thwarting their attempted scam. It feels immensely satisfying to come out on top. Our class has been experiencing a decline in performance since the start of the year, mainly due to the school counselor's implementation of strict study schedules and excessive micromanagement. The counselor insists on 6 hours of daily after-school studying on weekdays and a staggering 12 hours on Sundays. Furthermore, the subjects we should be studying are predetermined, and we are required to provide evidence of our study sessions. Personally, I find the counselor's approach detrimental to my academic performance, but he remains unconvinced. He believes that the students are not adhering to his plan precisely, resulting in burnout and poor results. To make matters worse, the counselor introduced a new and absurd concept last week, the study marathon. This entailed joining a Zoom meeting and live streaming ourselves while studying from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. It was an outlandish idea, but we had no choice but to comply. However, this is when I came up with a clever solution. I decided to record a looped video clip of myself studying and use a virtual webcam to broadcast it to the class. I created 2 clips, one for the daytime classes and another for the evening sessions. Each video consisted of me pretending to study in front of my laptop while listening to music, carefully ensuring that my presence was hidden at both the beginning and the end for seamless looping. On the first day of the study marathon, only 10 out of 30 students joined the Zoom meeting. The counselor was perplexed as to why his brilliant idea did not garner enthusiasm. This pattern continued for 2 more days. By the last meeting of the 3rd day, only 3 students remained. Approximately 50 minutes into the class, the counselor shouted, "Mr. X, can you hear me?" While my looped video showed an aggressively head-bopping version of myself engrossed in music. The counselor sighed in frustration and abruptly ended the meeting. Needless to say, there were no more study marathons after that. I want to clarify that I am not lazy or opposed to studying. I believe the counselor had good intentions, but his plan was destined to fail. Every student has their own unique study routine, and mine involved studying for 45 minutes, followed by a 15-minute break. The school counselor, on the other hand, expected us to study for 90 minutes with only 10 minutes of rest. Throughout those 3 days, I continued to study using my normal routine. Unfazed by the study marathon's unrealistic expectations,